Robert Ryder Dewey was convicted of raping and killing a woman in Colorado back in 1996. However, he will probably be exonerated because new DNA evidence indicates that he is not the person who committed this crime. So what's incredible is if you look back to 1996 when he was on trial, the semen found on the victim didn't even match Dewey. Even though there was inconsistent evidence, they decided to arrest him anyway, convict him, and he spent years in prison as a result. So the reason why we're bringing this story up today is because the death penalty is something we've talked about several different times, and the death penalty is still something that's legal in many states in the U.S., and does it make sense to have the death penalty? For instance, in California, the death penalty is still used. In Texas, it's still used. So, Steve, this was a story that was very important to you. So tell us what you think about it.
Well, I've always been in favor of the death penalty growing up. And, you know, I guess I still am in some respects. If the person committed a terrible crime and we knew for 100% certainty that that was the person who did it, I suppose, you know, at a philosophical level, I am in favor of it. However, we've had so many mistakes, and it's getting really out of control. In 2000, Governor George Ryan of Illinois, he stopped all executions because since the death penalty was reinstated in Illinois in 1976, they've had 12 executions and 13 exonerations off of death row, which means that half the people on death row were not guilty of the crime. I mean, that is sickening to me. And a couple of days ago, I was a special guest of Mike Farrell, and we watched a private screening of the movie West of Memphis, which is about the West Memphis 3. And that story is absolutely incredible. The level of misconduct by the prosecutors in the case, and these three guys spent 18 years in prison for a crime they did not commit. And the worst part of that story is that Arkansas just released them 6 months ago. And they released them on the basis of them taking what's called an Alford plea, which is where they plead guilty to the crime, yet maintain their innocence. And they did that so that the state won't be exposed to a lawsuit for false imprisonment for 18 years. So these guys are still on the record, you know, as having, you know, murdered 3 little boys who are 8 years old. Meanwhile, the real killers are always out there.
It's interesting, you know, because in this case, and the guy's name was Dewey, right? Mm-hmm. He had blood on his shirt. Turns out it wasn't the blood of the victim, right? But even at the time that they convicted him, they knew that it wasn't his semen. The girl had been sexually assaulted. So why would you convict the guy and send him away? Now, in that case, it was life without parole, right? But imagine if he got executed in a different state, you know, he might have gotten a death penalty for that crime. And then you can't undo that mistake. Look, I'm with Steve. I used to be in favor of the death penalty, okay? And I switched, and people say, like, hey, what have you gotten more liberal on? And I give that as an example, but it's not because I got more liberal on it. If I was sure that the guy did it, you know, then I think I come out in the opposite direction, okay? But that's the problem. It turns out that we're nowhere near sure that the guy did it. It turns out we make mistakes for these guys who are convicted of and given life sentence or even death sentences all the time. So I just react to the facts that are before us. And so in the Dewey case, the last thing he said when the judge was prosecuting him or was putting him away is he said, the real killer is still out there. Don't you care about that? And the judge said, oh, I'm very happy to put you away. And he's been in jail since 1996 when it wasn't him. I wonder if that judge is still happy. Now, and how unhappy would he be if he had been executed?
Let me give you some exact numbers because I think that it gives you an idea of how often this mistake is made. Post-conviction DNA testing has exonerated 290 people in the United States since 1989. And also when it comes to DNA exonerations, there were about 67 between 1989 and 1999. And about 222 between 2000 and 2011. And the reason why you see that huge jump in 2000 to 2011 is because they got a lot better about collecting DNA evidence, testing DNA evidence. So, you know, Steve made this great point about all the people who were convicted of murder and crimes before 2000? How many of them were either executed or given life sentences before this time and were innocent?
And if you're looking at the 290 number and thinking, well, I mean, given how many people are in jail, maybe that's not that big a number. Understand, they're not doing this for all this testing for all the people in jail. Are you kidding me? It's for a very, very small amount of people where they think that there's, a possibility that they might be innocent, and it's a really important case because it takes time, it takes money, it takes resources, it takes manpower. So they do it on very few cases, and yet they still have that kind of a large number within that context. Okay? We've gotten it wrong way too many times. Look, if you're a person of any conscience, you can't be in favor of the death penalty. Not on a philosophical grounds, but on practical grounds. We're killing the wrong people.
Well, let's keep it real. Even in this conversation, we keep posing it as a mistake. Maybe it's just the way I hear it on my biased ears, but I'd say 80% of the time when you hear about someone that should have been exonerated, there's obvious evidence with either a lack of a credible eyewitness or straight evidence even before DNA that the semen didn't match the guy. They just go after and get someone, or there's a plea deal. They just want to get somebody convicted of that particular crime. It's not like it's unconscious convictions. These are conscious decisions to get the wrong people, and they don't give a shit. They just want to get somebody, or they get a particular kind of person that they want to get. You know what I'm getting at? So it's not a mistake. It's a mistake probably 15% of the time. An honest mistake.
Right.
The rest of the time, they're just trying to get somebody.
So there's two elements there. Now, in the state of Texas, they've shown over and over again significant racial discrimination in these kind of prosecutions, especially for life sentences. Okay. Now, in this case, for example, with Dewey happens to be white, right? That gets to, I think, even the larger issue. The larger issue is prosecutors who got to have the conviction. They're not actually doing their job. Their job is to seek justice. It's not to actually put people away, right? But oftentimes, of course, that's not how they view it. They view it as, what's my prosecution rate, right? What's my percentage of conviction? So right or wrong, they're like, I got to get a guy, and that happens to be the guy, and especially if you've already started the case, forget it. You're never going to admit a mistake. You're going to plow forward and put him away based on your own ego and your career, whether that guy's guilty or not. And it's sickening. And knowing that, how could you still be in favor of executing people, given how it's playing out? You just can't if you're a decent person. I don't know, maybe that's too harsh for you, but that's the reality, man. I mean, because you're saying, yeah, I don't mind executing the wrong people a lot of the time. That's just outrageous. By the way, in California, there's a ballot initiative in November to finally get rid of the death penalty. It's been on the books since 1978 in California. And by the way, it's cost the state of California $4 billion.
Please go to safecalifornia.org to find out more, and if possible, just donate, because there has to be a big push. Right now, the polls indicate that people in favor of this ballot initiative are 5 points ahead, but that could change very quickly. And going back to what you said, Cenk, we spent $4 billion to execute 13 people. We're spending $380 million, or whatever the math turns out to be, to execute a person. And it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy, because that money should be spent, let's say forget education, let's just keep it in criminal justice. That money can be spent to help victims' families, to deal with their losses. It can be spent on programs that prevent crime, so that we have less people being murdered out there. I mean, it could be spent in 100 different ways that's better. And instead we're wasting it on the system.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a conservative who cares about, getting the budget under control, wouldn't you rather spend that $4 billion on the deteriorating education system in California, right? So that ballot initiative is a no-brainer for me in November. Definitely get rid of the death penalty.
Yes, it's known as the Safe California Act, and it'll replace California's death penalty with a sentence of life in prison with no chance of parole.
So it's not like you're being easy on the people who are convicted. They get life without parole. I'm telling you, that's as no-brainer an issue as I've ever seen.